Don't cross the streams.
Why?
It would be bad.
I'm fuzzy on the whole good-bad thing. What do you mean bad?
Try to imagine all life as you know it stopping instantaneously and every molecule in your body exploding at the speed of light.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes, and I'm getting this Infinite Frontier pseudo review out a little later than I anticipated. It was quite a dense read. A lot of good information in there. If you want to know the bottom line up front, is this a bad comic? No, not at all. Is it a great comic? Nah, not really. It's pretty good. It's nothing wrong with it. For the most part, the art's really good. Some interesting characters. I understand a lot of people are probably going to compare this to like DC Universe Rebirth. Obviously, they kicked off the Rebirth era. And there are some similarities. There's certainly some similarities as far as the narrative device used, one character peeking in on the universe and kind of catching us up on the current state of all the characters that we're going to be seeing, at least the main players, in Infinite Frontier. But there's some big differences. Like DC Universe Rebirth almost felt like an apology of sorts, where Jeff Johns and company were saying, listen, we understand we dropped the ball. Our universe has gotten really sloppy, a little bit too dark. We're going to bring it back. We're going to give you the best versions of the characters. We're going to bring back some fan favorites that you wanted. And we hope you enjoy, Rebirth. It was one of the better comic stories I've read, in modern time. That is a great comic book. This one is not quite that. This is kind of like, listen, we dropped the ball on Rebirth. We went a little too dark. We're going to bring it back a bit. But now that you've seen DC Future State, and you see where most of this is going, it's going to get a lot darker, and it's kind of take what you're getting. More of the thing is less acknowledgement, I think, on DC's part of how they got it wrong. Although there certainly is a part at the end where Diana Prince Wonder Woman has a speech with the Spectre about how things kind of went off the rails a little bit, but that's way at the end. That's not really the tone of this comic book, but it's pretty good. I hope you enjoyed it. Like I said, it is a dense read. I'm not gonna. I don't know. It's tough to cover it, so I'm gonna go talk about kind of some of the big important stuff first. Kind of group some things together that I think I can talk about, and we'll talk about your favorite heroes and where we're heading with DC's Infinite Frontier, which is not a one-shot to reintroduce this new era of DC Comics. It's introducing a 6-part event series that's coming out in June. Already talked about it on the channel yesterday, so let's get right into it. Oh, wait, before I get into it, if you enjoy comic book reviews, comic news, opinions, debate, Thinking Critical YouTube is probably the comic book YouTube channel for you, and I say you should probably subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications, give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this, thumbs down if you don't. Either way, I definitely want to hear from you guys. What did you think of DC's Infinite Frontier #0? Now, getting right into it, I have got to give a shout out to this beautiful piece. Like I said, the art's pretty strong all the way through, but this piece of art from Jorge Jimenez of Batman, cloaked in darkness, wonderful shadows all over him, doing cool stuff in Gotham, absolutely takes the cake. I love this. Jorge Jimenez is just, I'm glad he's being elevated. Obviously, it's kind of at the cost of a lot of mainstay DC artists moving on, doing other projects. Obviously, they're still going to do stuff with DC, but they're not so much like DC artists. They just work with DC every once in a while. It feels like Jorge Jimenez, he's like the DC artist now. I think he's been elevated to their number one guy. And with art like this, you can see why. Now let's get right into the story. We open up, and it's basically they're running down what the new Omniverse is. We were in a multiverse that was shielded from an omniverse, but now that Wonder Woman has taken care of the Batman Who Lulls and Perpetua within Dark Knight's death metal, the walls are down, things are opening up, and we're in a whole new adventure here as far as the status quo of DC Comics. And Wonder Woman, who we thought was ascending, she comes to meet the Quintessence, and they're offering her a spot on the team. She's going to be one of the 6 most powerful beings in the entire universe. I'm sorry, not universe, the omniverse. And she will look over everything that's going on and all that stuff, all the stuff that comes with being part of the Quintessence. But before she can take them up on their offer and give them a yes or no, she needs to check on her friends. So the Spectre says, let's just do that. Let's go see what your friends are up to. And that's when we kind of get into DC's Infinite Frontier #0. Now, if you didn't know that Batman was the most important character in the DC Comics universe, you will absolutely know after this issue. Obviously, I showed you a piece of art with a wonderful illustration of Batman, but this could almost be like a Batman main story with just a bunch of backups, because he easily gets the most page time, just as far as the Batman series, Batman universe, with James Tynion, the writer, and Jorge Jimenez, the artist. Obviously, you can never get too much Jorge Jimenez. Now, a lot of stuff happens. We've heard about this infamous A-Day that happens at Arkham Asylum, and it happens here. The Joker has stormed Arkham, and he's flooded the building with Joker poison. He's killed Bane. Kind of a letdown. Felt pretty anticlimactic. But we also do check on some of the other heroes within Gotham and the Batman universe, and we do get confirmed that Barbara Gordon is Oracle. She says, I will dabble with the costume as Batgirl now and again, but for the most part, I am Oracle. I feel better in the chair, kind of steering things as they go along. So when James Tynion restarted or took over as the Batman writer, it appeared that Lucius Fox was going to be, in essence, kind of replacing Alfred as kind of his operation support. Obviously, there is a schism between Lucius Fox and Batman at this point, and Lucius Fox is like the richest man in Gotham. He's one of the richest men in the world because he has Batman's fortune, and he ain't giving it back. At least that's what he said. So now Barbara Gordon is going to take that role. Feels like a much better fit, and obviously she's going to be doing something similar to that with Nightwing, at least in the beginning of Tom Taylor's run. I find this a good change. I quite like it. It's also heavily hinted at that we will see that Batgirls, whether it's a miniseries or an ongoing. I imagine it's the former. It seems like they are investing heavily in miniseries and anthologies. So we will likely see, spoiler, in Orphan as the Batgirls in some type of miniseries coming up. There was a lot of information to parse through as far as the Batman stuff. One of the big ones was we finally got the reveal of Simon Saint, the man behind the magistrate. Obviously, Mayor Nakano has ascended. He has been elected, folks. He is the mayor of Gotham, and we already see the very first indications that if you're wearing a mask in Gotham, there's a shoot-to-kill order. And Simon Saint, who is apparently behind Saint Industries, is the man behind the magistrate, and he's working with Scarecrow. And we saw that very horrifying design that we'd already talked about here on the channel. So this is the first appearance of Simon Saint, I believe, in Infinite Frontier #0. He might have showed up earlier, but I think this is it. And we also see the death of Bane. Now the problem is with the Omniverse and just basically the way DC's operated the last few decades. We all know this Bane death isn't permanent, and there are no stakes really involved in any of this. So this big shocking death that might, you're like, oh wow, I finally saw the death of Bane. No, you did. He'll come back. And that's probably one of the big downfalls of this Omniverse idea, and just the way DC's been doing business lately. And when I say lately, I mean for a couple of decades. Next up, let's get to something I find confusing, and I still have faith in Philip Kennedy Johnson's Superman. But I'm definitely getting the feeling that his Superman might not put Clark Kent at the forefront, at least the beginning stages. We barely saw Clark Kent Superman in his Superman Worlds of War series, or two-part miniseries in Future State. We barely saw Clark Kent, the patriarch of the House of L, in House of L Future State. We saw him for a few panels there. And we essentially do not see him, except for in some flashbacks when they kind of go down through the history. It feels like here, Phil Kennedy Johnson is acknowledging all the things that have gone wrong with Jonathan Kent. Yes, he was sent into space with the bad man. He was lost on a world, imprisoned and tortured by versions of his father. So he's at least acknowledging some of the problems with Jonathan Kent, but it feels like Philip Kennedy's Johnson's main focus, likely at the beginning of his Superman Action Comics run, is healing Jonathan Kent and getting him back in order, likely at the expense of Clark Kent as Superman. Now, that might upset some people, but that is the feeling I get. And there's a really weird story arc here. Obviously, we had heard about it in the spoilers, but the Spectre thinks Jonathan Kent is like tabbed for evil. He's going to go crazy. And Wonder Woman's like, what are you talking about? He goes, I can see a rotten egg I know a rotten egg when I spot it or something. He just, for some reason, he thinks Jonathan Kent's going to go evil, even though there's never been any hint of that ever happening. Even when he was on a planet being tortured for years by an evil version of his father, he came back and essentially was unscathed, at least mentally and spiritually. So there's never been an indication that he would go evil, but the Spectre thinks he will, and Jonathan Kent proves him wrong in the span of about 4 pages. Kind of an odd Superman story. I'm still behind Philip Kennedy Johnson. There's some other important characters. They didn't get as much shine here. I will say this. The opening story is Brian Michael Bendis' Justice League story. And boy, that leaves something to be desired. We didn't get the normal wall-to-wall text of conversation and whatnot, because I don't know. I guess maybe he's changed a new leaf, and we'll get that in Justice League. Maybe it's a new Brian Michael Bendis. But man, you don't get the feeling he cares much about any of these characters that are in there. And the Shazam rumor is absolutely true. He is referred to as Shazam as far as a couple times being Black Adam, and it's basically Superman and Flash going, yeah, it looks like Black Adam's a good guy now. What a story. No mention of any other characters that are on the team. We didn't even see Naomi, so that was a little bit of a shocker. And bravo to Brian Michael Bendis for having some restraint, but not exactly a wonderful introduction to the Justice League. Quite boring. I'm still behind Jeffrey Thorne's Green Lantern, but I'm starting to lose a little faith there. This was quite boring as well. We get the breakup of Simon Baz and Jessica Cruz. The dialogue in this is a little bit clunky. The inclusion of Teen Lantern feels silly. She's being, quizzed by the Guardians of Oa. I do like the art, though. I'm a big Dexter Soy fan, and I think it looks good. The other one, this was pretty much a surprise. Well, I guess it wasn't a surprise if you read the spoilers, but we get a conversation between Barry and Wally, and this feels like Joshua Williamson maybe. I feel like there's a regret for him that he ever allowed Wally West to be a part of Heroes in Crisis. Not that it was his decision, but if he could go back and like stomp his feet and throw a fit, he would do it, like Mark Waid style, to try and save Wally West from Tom King. But Barry Allen is taking his dream job. What's his dream job, you ask? Working for President Superman in Justice Incarnate, overwatching the new the Omniverse. They also go into talking about Earth Omega and Elseworld. A little bit confused. I thought these were the two centers of the new Omniverse. But apparently Earth Omega is like as far away as possible. It's like Pluto. How is that the center? I'm not going to get into foci and focus and heavenly bodies and stuff like that, but it did make sense in my mind. But apparently these things do not work by the laws of physics anymore. But the big thing is Flash, or Wally West is the new Flash. And spoilers here, on Monday, Joe and I are going to talk about how we would fix the Flash. And this is essentially how Joe would do it. I had a much more intricate story that DC Comics does not have time for. But basically, they're just forgetting about all the stuff that happened. And Wally West is the new Flash. And Barry Allen is part of Justice Incarnate. Now, you're going to wonder why. Why is Yara 4 getting her own page? I just ran out of places to put it, but this is the Yara 4 story, quite brief. If you didn't know, she has an aunt who signs. She has a white uncle. She grew up in Boise. She's going back to Brazil to catch back up on her roots, where she came from. The Amazons are keeping an eye on her. Wonder Woman, Hippolyta, Nubia, they are all very interested in this character, and they know that they need to keep an eye on her. She's tabbed for big things. And also there's a couple of other characters that are keeping an eye on her, and they phone it in. They say, listen, we've got eyes on target. So apparently she's got an adventure coming up in very short order once she arrives in Brazil. So there you go. Yara 4, the breakout character from Future State. She will be the starring in the new Wonder Girl series. So some stuff that I was just kind of like, why? Obviously, in Green Lantern 80th anniversary, we did get the very, very subtle hints that Alan Scott on Earth 0 was gay, much like his counterpart on Earth 2. And this is the confirmation. He has a conversation with his children. There's a weird line in here, and I don't know why they included this, because it makes no sense with the history of the character. Now, I haven't read as much Alan Scott as maybe other people, but I have read enough to know that we saw a lot of thought balloons. We got to see Alan Scott's thoughts when it came to the loves of his life, his wife, and things of that nature. And this is what he had to say. I even let myself get married a few times to women I did love, but with all my mind. But I did that knowing there was something about myself I was hiding away. That's the problem when you have thought balloons. There's no hiding it. Where was he hiding it? Like, he was so scared of it, he wouldn't even think about the fact that he was attracted to Ben for all those years. I think without that line of dialogue, this probably is a bit more effective. But you're almost you're treading on like Iceman territory, where this is in direct opposition to the history of the character. I don't know why James Tynion did that, but it's not effective. We knew that Alan Scott on Earth 0 was gay, but he was gay all along. And guess what? His children were happy with it, and they fully accepted it. The next one, we knew that Nubia was going to get the crown and be the new queen of Themyscira. I thought, that doesn't make sense. I wonder how they're going to explain that to where it does make sense. And it doesn't. Becky Cloonan and William Conrad do not do a good job making this pass the smell test. First of all, when Wonder Woman ascends and we've got Hippolyta like grieving the loss of her daughter, all the Amazons are fighting each other to see who's going to be Wonder Woman, but everybody assumes it's going to be a Nubia. Where did this come from? Why would everyone just assume it's a Nubia? Why wouldn't it be Donna Troy, Yara Ford, who was apparently quite important? Why wouldn't it be Cassie Sandsmark or any of the other Themyscirans? Why would they just all assume it was Nubia? And then why would Hippolyta give up her crown to Nubia so she could go be the Wonder Woman? Because she doesn't want to put somebody else in jeopardy after her daughter died? Why did you send your daughter out there to begin with? This did not work for me. I have a feeling that they have picked the wrong Wonder Woman creative team just as far as the writers go, and it's probably not going to go anywhere good. But there you go. Nubia should probably, if this is what they want to do, Nubia should probably just be Wonder Woman, if I'm being completely honest. She looked Medusa in the face. Actually, I don't think Medusa's head was in the box, but that was where the story was going. The other women chickened out, and she did not. So therefore, she is the queen. Next up, Roy Harper just shows up out of the blue. Now, when we had the reappearance of Wally West in DC Universe Rebirth, we find out he was stuck in the Speed Force and forgotten a time, and no one remembered who he was. And he was just stuck there. We do not get that with Roy Harper. He's just back. And he doesn't even know why. He's like, hey, I'm back from the dead. Not sure why. And then he thinks about, email or texting some people, and he doesn't do it. He's on the DL. Made no sense to me whatsoever. I imagine, do I really think they're going to come up with a really good explanation? Not really. But I think he's going to be joining up Alan Scott, and they're going to be tracking down some other people in the DC Universe that have gone missing. At least that's what it sounds like. That's what Infinite Frontier is going to be. At least the event series. But this was completely unremarkable. I mean, I'm excited Roy's back. I love Roy Harper. I love Arsenal. But, they could have tried. Next up, some weird stuff. It's kind of like the dark nature of what all this is, and where Future State probably ruins a lot of this. Like, we know what's happening as far as the Magistrate in Gotham. And guess what? The Magistrate's taken over in Gotham. We know Superman, Clark Kent, is going to leave Earth and go to Warworld. And we know all of these children going to the Teen Titans Academy are going to die. They're all going to be murdered. Isn't that nice? What a lovely thought. Thank you, DC Comics, for introducing us to all these murdered kids. And, of course, we do see the Red X Hood coming out, so one of them is going to survive. Apparently that character, that's it. Next up, we had Alex Maleev on art on this Green Arrow, Black Canary story. Why isn't Brian Michael Bendis and Alex Maleev doing that series? This is the series at DC Comics Brian Michael Bendis probably can't screw up. It's kind of weird. Why would you give him Justice League and let him fall on his face and look like a moron? Where you can give him this perfectly good series, and you can see Alex Maleev is doing great art on it. That should be one of the series that they're doing. It makes no sense to me. But at least two people in the DC regular universe, is Earth Zero Prime? I don't even know. Two people that reside in the Omniverse somewhere, named Oliver Queen and Black Canary, are aware that things happened, and they're investigating. Well, there you go. Next up, Star from Jeff Johns. If you are a fan of Star, you probably like this story. If you could care less about Star, like me, you probably wish it wasn't there. And that's probably the biggest problem with this comic book. There's a lot of characters and a lot of filler for you to. It's kind of a high price tag for you to read the 20 pages of the characters that you actually want to know about. Unless you're a Batman fan, then it's probably 30 pages because he got double the treatment. But otherwise, you're kind of slogging through this Star story that, if you're a Star fan, you probably like it, but it seemed pretty boring to me. So finally, after she goes and checks on all her friends, Diana goes back before the Quintessence to let them know, and they're like, we're so happy that you're going to join the Order. It's time for you to become one of us. And she's like, sorry, fellas, you misunderstood me. I'm declining this offer, but after everything I've seen, I can see that this is an infinite frontier to be explored, and I cannot take you up on your offer. And she turns him down so she can come back to the world. What a swerve. I thought she was going to go, and although the character itself would have been quite redundant, as I believe Hare is up there in the Quintessence, so essentially representing the same mythology. So that was her decision. She said, take your offer and stick it straight up your Rudy Poo candy asses. I'm moving on with my life. Now, somehow she ends up in Valhalla. I'm sure that Becky Cloonan and Conrad are going to really explain that one. I have no faith that their Wonder Woman's going to be good, but that's just me. Hopefully other people enjoy it. Now, the end of this is truly remarkable because up to this point, even the Brian Michael Bendis stuff, while unremarkable, was not bad. For the most part, the art was good. Although somehow the Howard Porter Flash art might have been the weakest. That was strange. Until we get the last pages. I do not know why they saddled John Romita Jr. with this last reveal, the epilogue, where we see the death of the Quintessence. And it's Darkseid, but he kind of looks like an enormous mummy, like a dark matter mummy or something. I don't know. Like, why would... You shouldn't be setting people up for failure. And I feel like they absolutely set up John Romita Jr. for failure. But they are also setting up Darkseid to be the new Batman Who Lolls. Because now he's even more powerful than the pre-crisis Darkseid. And he says, nobody respects me anymore. But now that I've been made whole again by adding all these characters, every version of myself into one character, I'm going to rain death and destruction on everybody. I'm going to kill you all. And it's going to be continued in Infinite Frontier #1. Which I imagine will be the precursor to another event where Darkseid takes over the world. Kind of like Dark Knight's death metal. Maybe it'll be Dark Knight's rap metal. Maybe. Maybe they'll keep the naming going. Who knows? But this was a terrible way to end this comic book. This is easily the worst. Like, it's kind of embarrassing. I feel bad for John Romita Jr. They should be treating him like this. They should let him go and work for Marvel with characters that he actually likes. But this version of Darkseid is quite embarrassing, and hopefully John Romita Jr. never illustrates the character again. So that is it. That is my wrap-up, the good, the bad, and the ugly of Infinite Frontier. There's certainly a lot of good to it. If you are a Batman fan, congratulations. You got even more Batman, even though Batman 106 came out this week. And there's a lot of other characters that no one has heard from in a very long time, but he is Batman, so you had to get plenty of the Batman action. If you're a fan of John Kent, it feels like Philip Kennedy Johnson is your man, and he is going to address that. I don't think the Wonder Woman stuff is feeling all that promising, although I will read the Joelle Jones Yara Flor stuff because I do appreciate the character. I'm still on board the Robin series, still on board Nightwing. Swamp Thing, I think, will be great. Obviously, we got the first issue of that this week as well. But there you go. That is Infinite Frontier #0. This is the new direction of DC Comics. It's a new era, baby. Some people are going to say this is DC Universe Rebirth good. Balderdash, not even close. Is it bad? Absolutely not. This isn't Marvel Comics 1000, where it's embarrassing. But, it doesn't reach the levels of that. And I think a big part of that is because DC Comics was not willing to acknowledge any of their failures. They forgot to be like, hey, the reason that we're doing this is because we screwed up. We'll see how this goes. I am not optimistic about Infinite Frontier and the infinite possibilities that it brings with this. But I am hoping and praying that I will be proven wrong, and DC Comics is in the right direction moving forward. Now, let me know what you guys thought about Infinite Frontier #0, and let me know how stupid I am, because you guys always do that, and I appreciate it. I enjoy the banter, and you have a good day.